Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of Explore and Engage with Anam. There's a breaking news that I'm going to share with you. Some of you may know this already. Joe Biden has decided to exit the presidential race. This is the breaking news. And this is Sunday, July 21st of 2024. This is a major news update. Joe Biden is the incumbent president. He's a Democrat. He was running for re-election. And all of a sudden, we find out that he is not running for re-election. He has decided to exit the presidential race. Now, this really does not come as a big surprise to a lot of people, because if you have been paying attention to what's been happening over the last few weeks, then you know that there was a lot of pressure on Joe Biden, a lot of pressure from the Democrats on Joe Biden to exit the presidential race. There was a debate in June between Trump and Biden, and that debate revealed to the entire world that Joe Biden is not fit for the office of the president. And since then, the pressure on Joe Biden kept increasing. More and more members of Congress asked him to leave the race, to exit the race, to not seek another term. And that number kept growing. And some very prominent Democrats asked Joe Biden to leave the race and to not run. And initially it seemed that Joe Biden was pretty adamant that he's going to run, that he's not going to exit the race. But finally, today, the announcement came that Joe Biden is exiting the race. He's not going to be running for re-election for a second term. And now, there are so many questions about what's going to happen next. That's what people are trying to figure out. We're just a few months away from the election, the November election, and the incumbent president suddenly made the announcement that he's not going to seek another term. So what's going to happen now? Who is going to be at the top of the ticket from the Democratic side? On the Republican side, everything seems to be going well. The Republican National Convention took place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. He announced his running mate. It's J.D. Vance. So it's a Donald Trump, J.D. Vance presidential ticket. People are already promoting the signs, the Trump-Vance 2024 signs. And the Republicans are energized and they're ready to win. Donald Trump was the 45th president of the United States, and people are looking forward to seeing him as the 47th president of the United States. On the Republican side, there's unity, there's energy, there's enthusiasm. And on the Democratic side, there's confusion. What is going to happen now? Who is going to be the Democratic presidential nominee? There are lots of names that are being mentioned. I've heard the name of Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, the governor of Michigan. Some are saying Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. Others are saying Gavin Newsom of California, Andy Beshear of Kentucky, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. Some have even mentioned the name of Pete Buttigieg, who's the Secretary of Transportation in the Biden administration. And believe it or not, I've even heard the names of Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota and Cory Booker of New Jersey. So lots of names being mentioned. And the question is, who is going to replace Joe Biden and be the presidential nominee? And let me mention the other name, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is the current vice president. And so naturally, a lot of people think that if Joe Biden is not going to be running for re-election, Kamala Harris will run as the Democratic nominee. But you know what? It's really not a given. Of course, there's another news update that Biden has expressed his support for Kamala Harris, but that doesn't guarantee that Kamala Harris will be at the top of the ticket. So, what's going to be the process going forward? I think there will be division within the Democratic Party. Some are going to say Kamala Harris. There will be some Democrats who will rally around Kamala Harris and support her. And others will say Gretchen Whitmer. Some will say Gavin Newsom. Some will say J.B. Pritzker. And in that process, there will be divisions within the Democratic Party. And let me remind you all that the Democratic National Convention is coming up next month in the city of Chicago, in the state of Illinois, in the neighboring state of Illinois. The reason I say neighboring is because I live in Wisconsin and Illinois is the neighboring state. So the Republican National Convention took place in Wisconsin. The Democratic National Convention will take place in Illinois. So what's going to happen at the convention? What's going to happen in the weeks leading up to the convention? Will the Democrats all come together and support Kamala Harris just because Joe Biden supports Kamala Harris? Or will there be competition? We're just few months away from the election. We're just weeks away from the Democratic National Convention. So what's going to happen? What is that process going to look like? Will there be competition? And if there are multiple candidates trying to secure the nomination, how will that selection process take place? Between now and the Democratic National Convention, will there be candidate forums? Will there be televised debates taking place? The Democratic voters have already spoken because in the primary process, they voted for Joe Biden. But now that Joe Biden is exiting the race, what's going to happen? Who will have the power to make the selection? The Democratic National Convention delegates? Will the delegates vote and make the decision who the nominee will be? And how will the Democratic voters react to that? There's a primary process. People in Democratic voters in different states, they vote. They vote for whoever they want to see as the nominee. And now that Biden's exiting the race, if the Democratic delegates end up making that selection, how will the Democratic primary voters feel about that? So this is not good for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is in crisis. And on the other hand, the Republican Party, they are united, they're energized. They have a lot of enthusiasm. So it's going to be very interesting, my friends. The weeks leading up to the Democratic National Convention, it's going to be very interesting. And it's not only about who the presidential nominee will be. Whoever the presidential nominee will be is also going to have a running mate. Joe Biden had Kamala Harris as the running mate. If Kamala Harris becomes the presidential nominee, then who is she going to pick as the running mate? Will she pick Gretchen Whitmer? Will she pick Josh Shapiro? Will she pick Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, Andy Beshear? I mentioned all these names already. So at this point, we don't know who the presidential nominee will be from the Democratic side, and we don't know who the running mate will be. Lots and lots of questions about the selection process, about what's going to happen. Lots of questions, not enough answers. And let me also mention one more thing. Many Republicans and many people out there, just, political commentators and people who pay attention to the political process, they have been saying for a long time that Joe Biden is not fit for the office of the president. But the Democrats, they still try to make the case that Joe Biden is fit and that he is able to serve. But after that presidential debate that took place between Trump and Biden, I think the Democrats couldn't hide it anymore, because the whole world saw Joe Biden's poor performance during the debate, and it became very clear to the entire world that Joe Biden is not fit to run for re-election. And he is not fit to serve in the office of the president. And so if Joe Biden is exiting the race now, shouldn't he also resign from the office of the president? It seems that he wants to complete his term. He wants to be in office until the end of his term. He wants to stay as the president of the United States until the end of his official term. But if Biden is not fit to run for re-election, shouldn't he resign immediately? Shouldn't Biden step down from his role as the president? But it seems that he's not going to do that. I think Donald Trump is really looking at a landslide victory this November. I think that's what's going to happen. There will be a landslide victory. Trump's going to win. The Trump-Vance ticket is going to win. The Republicans are energized. And because of the mess, the complete mess that the Democrats are in, it seems to me that the Republicans will not only win the White House, but the Republicans will also regain majority in the U.S. Senate and grow the size of the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. So I think in 2025, we are really looking at the Republicans in charge of the White House, in charge, and having a majority in the Senate and growing the majority and a larger majority in the House. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. I'm a Republican voter. People who have been listening to my podcast and people who watch my videos, they already know this, that I'm a Republican voter. I'm looking forward to voting for Donald Trump. But I'm not being biased here. I am not. I'm really telling you based on my careful observations and my knowledge and the analysis that I've done. Obviously, no one can guarantee who's going to win an election, but based on everything that's happening, everything that's been happening over the last few months, everything that happened during the RNC, how the Republicans came together, they united, they got together. And now this announcement from Joe Biden that he's not going to seek another term, when you add all of these up, it becomes very obvious that the Republicans are in a great position to win in November. And so I'm looking forward to the next few weeks, because I'm very curious about what the Democrats are going to do between now and the convention. Will they all rally around Kamala Harris and make her the nominee? Or will other Democrats step forward and seek the nomination. And if that happens, what's going to be the process? And I'm just curious to see the outcome at the end. Who ends up being the nominee and who ends up being the running mate? So I'm going to be paying attention, and I'll try to share with you the latest news, the updates, my views and comments, my analysis. So please stay connected to me. Thank you for continuing to listen to my podcast. Please visit my website, tossifanam.net. And when you are on my website, you can send me a message. You can sign up for my e-newsletter. You can read my blog posts. You can also check out my published opinions. I've written more than 100. I think the number is 108 at this point. Letters to editors and op-eds that have been published in newspapers across the country. So you can find all those opinion pieces on my website. You've got the links. There's a long list. If you click on published opinions, you'll see a long list of my writings. You can click on those links and read what I wrote. So please check out my website, tossifanam.net. If you want to send me an email, my email address is the following: tossif@tossifanam.net. You will also find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, formerly known as Twitter, and also on Truth Social. My friends, as a Republican, I am energized, I am hopeful, I am optimistic, and I'm looking forward to voting for Donald Trump in November 2024. So my friends, that's all for now. I'll come back with more commentary, so please stay connected. Thank you once again for continuing to listen to my podcast. I'll be back again soon with a new episode of Explore and Engage with Anam.